have a record of this. Just a reminder, this is a short session of the General Assembly this year. This is our second gathering. Some of you had trouble joining us last time, and I apologize for that. Hopefully we've gotten the Zoom link into everyone's hands today. Our next session will be on February 28th. That will be actually our last session as well. So we'll be here at 8 a.m. on February 28th. Just a reminder, the chamber, unlike many chambers, don't lobby for legislation directly, and we don't endorse candidates, but instead we offer this opportunity to all residents to ask and hear from legislators. We ask that you send your questions to us in advance at thirdhousequestions@gmail.com. I'll repeat that at the end of the session. Just a reminder, we've invited all of our legislators, anyone who represents any piece of the county. And today I see that we have Senator Walker here and Representative Ryan Lauer here. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for taking your time with us today. I'm going to ask each of you to give us a kind of a 4-minute summary of what's been happening and what you're tracking. And since we heard from Senator Walker first at our last session, I'm going to ask Representative Lauer to kick us off today.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, Cindy, and thank you everyone for joining. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me get a quick gut check on my mic. Is everybody hearing me okay? Great.
I hear you fine.
Yes, I had to use a different one this time, so thank you. It's been a short session, so this is a non-budget year and things have moved very fast. If you look at the activity as a halftime update, if you will, so all of the bills in the House have either made it or not made it through committee or not made it, and we had third final readings on last Monday. So all the bills that are moving have moved, and those that are not have not. And now we're swapping bills with the Senate. So I'm looking forward to the next couple of weeks hearing Senate bills and going through the process again. On the House side, there were 439 bills filed, and 111 made it out of committee. And 105 ended up actually passing and getting through the House. I'm sure Senator Walker will talk about the Senate side. They were very active this session, and I think they're sending over about 160 bills to us. So just a couple updates. We had significant testimony in committee on a lot of different topics. I sit on the Public Safety and Veterans Committee, and one of those bills that came through my committee did pass. It's House Bill 1004. That's going to be helping our local jails and our law enforcement to make flexible decisions on level 6 felony offenders. That's an issue that I've been working on for a number of years now to get more flexibility for our local jails to send level 6 felons up to the state prisons. I think that's going to be helpful for local jails that have overcrowding problems, and also problems with specific individual inmates who are dangerous or cause additional problem in their jail, and so that's very important. We're sending that over to the Senate. As a reminder, in the off year, we're not in a budget year, but we did make some significant changes. I think that will benefit every Hoosier, and that's House Bill 1002 is the largest tax cut in Indiana history. That's going to help the bottom line for all Hoosiers. Not only will every Hoosier get a $125 tax refund per taxpayer, But on top of that, we're going to be lowering through the bill income tax down to 3%. That's a 7% decrease in our individual income taxes, as well as targeted tax cuts for small businesses and businesses that use equipment where they pay the business personal property tax. And what we're doing on that is allowing that equipment that's being taxed for quite a few, or pretty much for the lifetime of the equipment. We're letting that phase out over a decade or so to allow businesses to make investments quicker and be able to stimulate our economy and grow our local jobs and revenue. I think that's going to be an enormous impact on our economy and continue the trend of Indiana being a leader in the country in bringing businesses, in creating jobs. From our last update, I had reported that Bartholomew County was at its lowest unemployment rate in 31 years. Well, now we've hit the lowest unemployment rate in Bartholomew County history at 1%. That's an incredible achievement and really a testimony to our employers, to our workers, to all the people here in Columbus and Bartholomew County that are working hard every day, that are trying to navigate through these last 2 years have been very difficult, making sure that that kids get to school. That's something that's been very important to me these last two years, that kids are in school and have every opportunity to learn. It's something that I think Indiana stands out in the country on our environment economically, and also our path forward is very bright. So very excited to talk about these issues today. I'm looking forward to your questions and having a conversation. So I appreciate that. I'm sure there's plenty we'll get into today, and looking forward to it. So thank you and good morning.
Thank you, Representative Lauer. Senator Walker, would you like to give us a high-level overview, please?
Sure, Cindy. Thank you. I think I'll, excuse me, I think I'll talk about a couple bills in particular. One that I've worked on for several years, trying to find a better pathway for high interest loans and trying to make it feasible for borrowers to not be entrapped by high interest loans, or what we call subprime lending. There is a subprime lending bill that's coming over. I think it's Senate Bill 352. And this bill actually failed to get a constitutional majority the first time it was put on the floor. It only passed with one extra vote when it did move the last week of session. And I won't, the bill language itself, as is common with a lot of these products, I think they're very complex unnecessarily in order to put consumers at a disadvantage when they're trying to shop what kind of lending products to get. But if I just tell you that for the typical loan, it's flexible as far as how much is borrowed and what the terms would be, but it's an installment loan, and it mirrors in many ways payday lending, and that's unfortunate. But under this bill, you can borrow say $1,500, and if you make the scheduled payments on time according to the terms, by month 6 you owe potentially $300 to $375 more than the original principal that you borrowed 6 months into the loan. The early payment of fees is structured such that even if the individual was to find a better pathway, get a second job, whatever it is, and increase their income, to pay off the loan, they would be paying off more than the amount they borrowed 6 months in after making all the payments on time. That is not the kind of product that is good for consumers in our state. And as I said, it passed with a narrow margin. There's a lot of big money lobbying behind this bill. And I'll just say it takes a lot of money sometimes to move bad ideas forward. And that's my opinion of that product. So Ryan, you've been forewarned. I think another significant bill, I don't remember the bill number, but Senator Niemeyer has brought, and it's been brought before. And if Milo Smith is on the call this morning, he would appreciate this. We've moved a bill on stop arm law for school buses, making it an infraction for a vehicle to be in violation of the stop arm law. There will be certain defenses to the owner of the vehicle if they're out of town, if the vehicle is stolen, if the owner regularly leases the vehicle to other drivers. But essentially, even if your son or daughter or your brother-in-law was driving your vehicle and that vehicle was determined to be involved in a school bus stop arm violation, you'll receive an infraction. The bill was amended toward the late stages so that you didn't receive any points towards your license, but you still are responsible for how your vehicle is used if you're not the driver. Obviously, the intent here is to try to reduce the violations that just continue to be at a unacceptable rate. We have looked at language like this in the past, and I mentioned Milo because he's carried these bills years ago. And I think, unfortunately, due to recent circumstances, I just said it's time to do it. And so if the vehicle is being charged with the infraction or the owner of the vehicle, regardless if we have proof, again, there's arguments that say my car was stolen, et cetera, but we don't care who's driving it. It's your car, you're responsible that it's used in a proper manner and that the driver obeys the laws of the road. You name it, we've worked on it. A lot of the issues have come up due to pandemic, so we're trying to increase the ability for reciprocity of medical licenses across state lines. We're dealing with everything, well, even small nuclear plants, the size of maybe a semi-trailer or maybe a little larger, the footprint not being that big. Authorizing the siting for those. Indiana has not built, and nor does it have any active nuclear power facilities, and that's one that's being moved forward. Senate Bill 411, I believe it is, takes another stab at solar and wind installations. It's being argued this one has more of a carrot than a stick approach, and that it provides a fixed return to the counties that would adopt these siting standards for wind and solar installations. They are commercial developers, they're not utilities. They sell their power to the highest bidder. And because they're selling green energy, there are certainly interest in buying that power over traditionally generated coal and other sources, natural gas, electrical power generation. And so it's targeted towards promoting those installations, which still use a significant federal credit in order to make them viable. So that bill is coming out. I'm working with the bill author on trying to repair some of the language from last year. There's still, I think, a big gap in some of the force majeure language, the act of God in the contract, that I think allows just too broad of an opening for the developers to abandon a project when it comes time to pay for the reclamation of the land and the decommissioning of the installation. So hopefully we can get some stronger language so that contractually that burden is not sidestepped by the developer. Once the money's gone, it's we want to make sure to hold everyone accountable to their contractual agreements. So that's just I guess a taste of what's coming over.
Thank you, Senator Walker. I want to stay with you for a minute. Ryan Lauer mentioned House Bill 1002. Now it's passed out of the House and it's being reviewed by a committee on which you serve, or already has been, Tax and Fiscal Policy. On one side, the legislation is billed as good for business, and even Ryan mentioned that. On the other side, there are concerns that this shifts the tax burden to households over time. And we had a note from Stephanie Carmer, who's on the call, who cited this bill in relation to a story she heard on Market Watch that talked about how important it is to attract high-paying advanced manufacturing jobs and make sure that your community has high quality of life and a high number of college graduates, and that the tax rates really don't matter that much in terms of business attraction, that what really sells is quality of life and educational attainment. So can you talk to us about all those issues? There are a lot of impacts of this bill.
Yeah, there are. That's a lot to unpack, Cindy. But I mean, the Senate also entertained looking at some tax revisions, and we dropped the bill. We've looked at just to the point of the caller. I forget. Sorry, I didn't get the name very well. But the question about quality of life, Indiana ranks, I think, something like 11th in the nation in terms of tax climate. You'd probably say first or second in the Midwest. And to that point, Indiana's personal property tax floors are traditionally higher than most surrounding states. But we also have a lower ceiling. When equipment is first acquired, many states in the initial years, first 10 years of operation, may have a 90, 85, 95% tax rate. Indiana begins, I believe, at 65% of assessed valuation on personal property tax. So we come in with less impact, and then we finish by holding on to the residual value longer. And so it's a wash in the end from a business decision standpoint. Unless they're someone who's just churning equipment all the time, there's probably very little impact. So I think we're very aware of the shift, the shift to other taxpayers depending upon the caps. And that's going to vary a lot by jurisdiction. Some have made the argument, well, there's still local income tax room based upon the growth quotient and the assessed value in their communities. They could still assess an income tax and replace that. Well, how's that going to attract business if we're just pushing the tax from the state level to the county level? So I don't disagree with the argument. I think it's my opinion. If anything comes out of this, it will be a gradual reduction in the fully depreciated property assessment that would allow equipment to fall off of the record keeping requirements in the administration. There'd be small benefit there, but anything that we do with property taxes, we're just shifting it. The counties have all said, look, that's fine. You can shift property taxes all you want. Just make sure there's a revenue replacement from the state income stream. And yes, I get that. And that goes to the argument of it's not good practice for me to offer a tax cut and take the glory when another jurisdiction has to take the heat for it. So it's going to be a tough sell. Not that we're not open to it, because we'd like to continue to put our Indiana in front of potential employers and potential businesses that might want to move here. But I'm not sure this is going to be the most impactful way to do that.
Stephanie's concern was this is a tax break for the rich. Do you agree with that?
Well, you can't tax people that don't have money. There's no future in that. So any tax break, I would argue, is for the rich. And in Indiana, at least, because we don't have a graduated income tax, we don't really do a lot with trying to create or trying to rebalance the tax structure so that it's more impactful to cuts at the lower end. That's not Indiana's history with that. So I think that's probably a true statement.
Thank you, Senator Walker. Representative Lauer, over to you. Had a question from Sharon Creek, who's a longtime active Third House attendee. She noted that she got an email from you with the subject line, "Time to Cut Taxes." And so she'd like to know if you would consider cutting the sales tax, the most regressive tax, this is a quote, and eliminating the sales tax on feminine hygiene products. And if not, why?
Thank you for the question, Sharon. It's important that we're looking at all Hoosiers when you're talking about the revenue to our state, to our local municipalities, and make sure that in my view, when you're looking at tax cuts, to look at the broadest impact to everyday Hoosiers. And we certainly were looking at reducing the sales tax. That was on the table, and that was discussed and debated. When you look at the numbers, we do receive a significant amount of sales tax revenue from people that are out of state, coming and visiting, businesses out of state doing business, people crossing the line to come in. But that's a fair statement to look at the sales tax, and we did. I remember growing up that we had a 5% sales tax in Indiana. Much easier to calculate in your head, right, than 7. However, when you look at the broad impact to every Hoosier, the income tax, certainly, I was in the forefront of making sure that everyday Hoosiers got a tax break from their hardworking dollars that they get to keep now, should this pass. And I think, and I've read the articles and some opinions on local revenue, and we are very sensitive to that. I'm very sensitive to that. I will say, with those concerns, the business portion of the House Bill 1002 addresses that very strongly. Actually, the local cities and counties will receive very likely more funds in the next 5 years, because we have a tax credit structure set up for that. And the bottom line impact is looking more along the timeline of eight years. And I think, being a local government, doing the budget for Bartholomew County, 8 years is a considerable time to be able to adjust if you need to. However, we're talking about increasing the economic environment and the ability for businesses to come here to Indiana and grow. And when you have that kind of impact, I would absolutely expect that we'll have economic growth because of this. We'll have more revenues because of this. It is a fact that if you're sensible about it, that cutting taxes actually can bring more revenue into local and state coffers. And I firmly believe that this bill would do that. We didn't the question on specific tax breaks for specific items, that comes up every year as looking at specific things on the grocery shelf to exempt, and we took a broad approach that would affect the most amount of Hoosiers in the income tax, and also the utility tax. So on your utility bills, you've got a couple bucks you got to pay every month that you see those little those little items, extra items on your utility bills. We're getting rid of those, so that's going to help a little bit. It'll also help in the administrative costs of doing all these things. And one more thing on the business personal property tax that I think is important. Currently, Indiana is the only state around that has this much of a business personal property tax. So what I think about our local businesses, our small businesses, and our farmers. Our farmers, here is an example. A farmer buys a piece of equipment, a tractor, a combine, um, and pays a tax on that property. And the next year pays a tax, and the next year pays a tax on it. In Indiana's environment, that goes on forever. So when it hits 30% floor, it just stays there forever. So a farmer with an 80-year-old piece of equipment is going to be paying on it the rest of their lives. That does not give a lot of incentive to go out and buy a new piece of equipment that could help your bottom line, and also that helps our small businesses, our farmers specifically. And I think that having that as a disadvantage from all our bordering states, Michigan's getting rid of it. Illinois has got is better than has less tax on these equipment than Indiana. And I think we need to stay competitive, and it's a win-win for Hoosiers as well.
Thank you, Ryan. Let's bounce over to Senator Walker and talk about educational curriculum. House Bill 1134 passed out of the House and was sent over to Senate Education and Career Development Committee. This language has some language that prevents teaching subjects that any individual should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any form of psychological distress. It goes on to list sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, national origin. It calls for posting of curriculum and an advisory board to approve curriculum at the local level. Educators are saying this will drive more teachers from the profession if passed. What's your position on this bill?
I agree with everything you said. I agree with everything that everyone else said on the bill, and I'm not supportive of the language in the bill. Senator Rogers in the Senate is former school teacher. I think she has the bill as the Senate sponsor. I'm pretty sure she does. She is talking about alternative language to that which is in the bill currently. But I think I mentioned I read a book that came from a constituent who said that this language causes distress, and I agreed that education should be uncomfortable sometimes, and I was forced to face parts of American history that are not pleasant to examine. But I did not find the book rather, to have any hidden agenda or open agenda that would have been inappropriate for fifth graders to study. So I don't see much about this bill that I want to move forward.
And Representative Lauer, you voted in favor of it. What was your stance?
Yes, absolutely. And we're going to be working with the Senate on the language. It is a comprehensive bill. And I'll take a step back, Cindy. We've seen articles, we've seen opinions on what's in the sentiments about what's in the bill. But let me be clear about what's in the bill. There's nothing in the bill that prevents teachers from teaching history and teaching the evils and ills of our history, and having a strong opinion about it, being against those evils in our history. There's specifically when the language that goes after discomfort, as you as you mentioned, specifically is if you're teaching that a particular group of people, based on their sex or ethnicity, um, are the problem, or blaming groups of people for uh, social problems and divisiveness, and that's an important distinction. There's nothing that I can see that would prevent. There's nothing that would prevent a teacher from continuing to teach historical evils, uh, and also to make sure that teachers are protected as well from having to go against their moral positions when it comes to, let's say, the administration in a particular school is pushing divisive concepts based on race or sex or ethnicity or religious bigotry or that sort of thing. So I think that's important to point out. The focus of this bill is empowering parents. For 40, 50 years, we had a curriculum textbook advisory board, and that was phased out in 2011, I believe. And I think it's really important that parents have a stronger voice in our schools. And this is an advisory committee. It's 60% makeup of parents, and it's chaired by a parent. And that's a really good opportunity for parents to have more say in what's being taught in our schools. And it also allows schools to have more dialogue with parents. Ultimately, the school board will be the body that makes the decisions and takes the recommendations from the parent advisory committees. And they have the final responsibility. But we want to make sure that schools have transparency on what's being taught in the classroom. And we're very sensitive, and we'll be working with the Senate. I wanted to make sure, and was very vocal, that we don't burden teachers with a bunch of busy work. But when I've been talking to teachers, when I'm following the changes, as this bill was changed significantly throughout the process, listening to our schools, listening to teachers, listening to parents, and we want to make sure that teachers are not overburdened. But it does have minimal requirements for curriculum materials. So I think most teachers, I should hope that every teacher has a general curriculum for their class that's going to be taught. In my experience, our teachers here do. This would just require them to make sure that they have that available to parents. It also sets up a structure, a formal structure for complaints when parents have complaints, and for a school to be responsive to those complaints, and responsive to material requests. If there's something in the classroom that a parent would like to review, that's okay. And that's happening today. Our schools get freedom of information requests, but in my experience, especially here in our school districts, when parents have questions or complaints or issues, I've found that our school districts have been doing the right thing, being very responsive and providing materials to parents that have questions. So I don't think that'll be a big impact to our schools here, but I think it'll be a big impact to parents and kids. So I think that part's very important. it's a comprehensive bill, so there's going to be or we'll be working together and having further discussions with our Senate partners. And I think it is an important bill that brings our parents closer to their child's education, and that's to me very important, that parents have a central role in our schools. And though it's an advisory role, I think that dialogue is very important. I'm very confident that we'll work with the Senate and hopefully find a place where we can bring these core principles forward and work together to improve some of these situations that we've seen in the state that exclude parents. And I want to be clear. There are schools, and we heard lots of testimony in the House that have taught or in classrooms and in some curriculum in the state taught very divisive topics on singling out groups. And that's, whether you focus on CRT or other divisive things that are going on in some schools. It's very limited as far as I can tell, but it's very serious when it does occur. And parents should have the ability to know what's going on in the classroom. And I think it's important to make sure that we do not have those kind of divisive topics coming into our classrooms. We should stick to our history and teaching the kids what they need to do to succeed in life. And that includes history, math, science, English, and that's what's important. And so I realize that there's other opinions about the bill and sections of the bill, and we definitely want to look at each of those and see if we can get and a conversation going on some of the ones that we have differences on. And I'm looking forward to that process, and I'm hopeful that something will come out that will improve the landscape for parents, for transparency in schools, and not burden our teachers with a bunch of busy work as well.
Ryan, thank you. I'm encouraged to hear you talking about the fact that in our community, those feedback loop exists. That's certainly been my experience, whether it's attending a parent-teacher conference, being a part of the PTA, attending a school board meeting to voice interest or concern, being a part of a school level continuous improvement committee, or being on one of the various committees that include parents. That's certainly been my experience. And I'm glad to hear you say that here in our community, those opportunities for parents to engage.
Absolutely. And that's the right thing to do. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I want to talk to you about another matter. Yesterday on the front page of the Republic, there was a story about Senate Bill 17, which is headed to the House. This is material harmful to minors is the topic. It's getting a lot of attention. Jason Hatton, our library director, said it was chilling, the notion of jailing a librarian for having materials on the shelf that someone else doesn't believe in. And the synopsis has a description of removing schools and certain public libraries from the list of entities eligible for a specified defense to criminal prosecution, alleging the dissemination of material harmful to minors or a performance harmful to minors. Do you understand Jason's concerns, and are you in support of the bill as it stands now?
Cindy, that was a question for me. I'll just go ahead
Yes,
and go forward with
yes.
it. You know, I read that article too, and Senate Bill 17 has passed the Senate. When the Republic interviewed me on it, I'm waiting to see how it makes its way through the House. It'll go through the committee process. It'll get another round of attention and debate. And I'm trying to figure out where the reality is on what's the problem and what we're trying to address. And Bill 1134 has some similar language in that. However, that's more focused on school libraries, which there is a difference, school libraries and public libraries. I am very sensitive to First Amendment concerns, and I think that should be one of the main considerations here. When I look into the details, I'm focused more on the House side of things, and I'm waiting to see how 17 goes through. But it's 17, as far as I understand, is not changing the law on disseminating, on giving harmful materials to minors. And in my reading, it's not focusing on books on the shelf as much as giving or soliciting inappropriate, age inappropriate, sexually explicit, pornographic materials to minors. So I think the point there is that in the code currently, we have a carve out, an exemption from our standard laws on providing, on protecting minors, on protecting kids, that outside of the school, the same person giving pornographic materials to 5-year-olds would be a crime. But if they did that in a school, it wouldn't be. And so that is a very, very fine distinction here, which I think is important to realize. We're talking about providing harmful materials, and there's a whole legal and the Supreme Court has weighed in on what is harmful material to minors, and you could think about, we're talking about here extremely graphic, explicitly sexual, pornographic, obscene materials. I think everybody would agree that whether you're in a school or you're in a library, soliciting those to a child is criminal, and it is criminal. So we talk a little bit past each other on the circumstances. We're not talking about Catcher in the Rye. We're not talking about literature. We're not talking about even books and things that have adult subject matter. I am very confident that our librarians in Bartholomew County and Columbus would not run afoul of the current laws that protect our kids from these types of materials. I can think of no scenario where our librarians or our library board or our teachers here would be soliciting minors with these kind of materials. So there would be no issue there. There would be no issue there. What we have seen in, and going back to on the House bill, we have seen in the state that a lot of times it's not the librarians. It's, in some of the cases that provided testimony in the House, some very inappropriate explicit materials brought into school libraries that the librarians didn't know had been brought into the libraries. And you know, the language in these that we're focusing on here is not changing the circumstances of the criminal aspect of giving obscene pornographic materials to minors. It's addressing what I see as a disconnect there, where if you did it, if you solicited a minor with these disgusting materials outside of school, you would go to jail. But because of the fact that you're in school, you can do that. Well, thankfully, it's not a problem here as far as I know, and that's in that our librarians do a great job. Nothing that I can see would be banning books, and certainly the standards have, the community standards have changed. If you go back 100 years, obviously we obviously we don't want to stifle our public libraries to provide books and materials that have a value to the public, and that's okay. But even in a library, in a public library, you have more adult sections. If a 5-year-old comes in, librarians are not going to be shuttling them to explicit materials. But I think the focus of this bill is even further than that, is just looking at the law that we have today on soliciting minors with disgusting, pornographic, obscene, however you want to categorize it, sexually explicit materials. If it's illegal outside the school to do it, or in a library, if it's illegal outside the library to do it, then I think it makes sense to be looking at why wouldn't it be illegal inside a library. So I know that people can talk past each other on this issue. I'm very sensitive to the First Amendment arguments, and so I'm waiting to see how it progresses through. I do not see, even as the language is today, that it would be putting librarians in jail.
Thank you for your response. I would like to bounce over to Senator Walker and talk about House Bill 1093 that passed out of the House. It contains provisions for a number of education-related items, including some language about school resource officers, but I want to focus on early childhood education. Section 3 of that bill talks about setting priorities for the state's Early Learning Advisory Committee. I had an opportunity to serve on that committee for several years. It's focused on ensuring equitable and affordable access to childcare, prioritizing both health and safety and kindergarten readiness at state subsidized programs, and developing a more robust pipeline of childcare workers. We're certainly seeing a real shortage right now, and with COVID, it's even magnified. The number of childcare early learning slots. This is really important for employers so that parents can get to work. We need to grow our workforce. Senator Walker, how are you working through this bill?
Well, I agree with you. I think the economy has shown us that we're not. We've got a lot of slots that are have waiting lists for children, so the parents can work or receive training. We talked about the CCDF funding a little bit in the Senate this year as well on another bill. Don't remember the bill number. Trying to make sure that we have those opportunities and are not penalizing parents that are trying to improve skills by being in a training program, and then they have to meet work requirements which violate their opportunity to participate in the CCDF childcare funding. We've kind of built some disincentives into the language itself by trying to be careful with tax dollars and how they're used. But those work requirements are just antithetical if you've got someone who's trying to complete an education that's going to allow them to actually qualify for a much better position, which would then allow them to afford the childcare they're going to need once they're in full employ. We've got kind of a vicious circle going on where people are taking positions to meet those job care or those job search requirements, but then they're not showing up, or they're dropping after a week or two because they've not even had opportunity to have childcare in those first few weeks of their new position. I've even heard of the what we call the gig economy, and how some of the attractiveness there is, if you're driving around your personal vehicle and you're doing the Uber and the Lyft and the DoorDash and that kind of thing, the child's riding in the front seat with you as you're making these runs. And that's because childcare is such a problem. So I know it's tight in Columbus. I know of some childcare providers that have tried to expand their facilities and run into bureaucracy on that as well. So I'm looking at what can we do about the actual physical building improvement approval process, so that you don't have to spend the money up front before you even have the licensing. If certain improvements to the building need to be required, but you don't know if you're going to be able to enter the building or not until you make those expenditures, it really makes it difficult for the child care provider to grow their business in accordance to demand. We need to look at all of these things, but I'm very supportive of those efforts to try to make sure that we have quality early child care and early learning opportunities, both kindergarten preparedness and preschool preparedness. It's just the way things are these days, and that you have such a wide variety of students as they arrive in those settings. You have the ones that do their ABCs together with kids that haven't learned to tie their shoes yet. And those are just complications that we need to make every effort. Once a child falls behind, it's been shown repeatedly that they tend to stay behind. And so we've got to get the kids as much opportunity when they start. So I've been very supportive of this kind of language. Language I wouldn't have supported probably 5-10 years ago. I guess that's one of those things where, Cindy, you'd probably say I've matured on the subject. But I do believe in parental roles in child rearing, absolutely. But we have an economy that's not structured as it was in maybe our parents' generation. So we just have to wake up to that reality.
Well, while we're on the topic, I'll just share there's a story in today's Republic about an evaluation of the On My Way pre-K program, which our county has participated in. And that's one example of attempts to sort of expand, open the door to more people. So yeah, make sure you read that. Finally, I had a question from Kylie Jones, Healthy Communities. Of course, very concerned about the growing use of tobacco products, e-cigarettes. Kylie explains that products like Juul play a significant role in the youth e-cigarette epidemic, and it's especially harmful to our youth. And we are seeing the e-cigarettes are a gateway to tobacco use, and I think we all understand the health repercussions of smoking, and it's been something we've targeted as a society for quite some time. There's really a dearth of bills addressing cigarette use or taxes, and the bill of banning flavored e-cigarettes has been sent to die in committee. Can you talk to us about why we're not seeing more action on this kind of work to make our community healthier?
That's
and I start with you, Greg, and then Ryan.
That's fine. I would say it's because of powerful influences that have money to lobby against matters such as this. I think all of these things are probably contributing to the culture that makes these popular with kids. Why is it that tobacco cigarettes we had gained an upper hand on the culture of teen smoking to where kids didn't think it was the thing to do any longer? I don't want to say cool because that really dates me so bad, but it wasn't encouraged within their own influential circles. And the e-cigarettes got that distinction as being popular among students. And again, probably the flavors contribute to that. That's not all there is to it. Social media and the influencers. I hear about influencers all the time, and people are now making a living as influencers. Legislators are not influencers as much as we are bleeding edge sometimes on trying to address these kind of problems. But I would say it's mostly the powerful interests that want to take advantage of the marketplace for the expansion of these products as tobacco use has slowly but continually declined in our country. Many of the tobacco companies in the United States actually make a lot more of their profits overseas than they do in the US any longer because of growing markets in other parts of the world. And so it's about the economy is kind of the pat answer, or the economic opportunity for some. Let's put it that way.
Thank you. Representative Lauer, tobacco has a powerful hold on folks. What's your response to the lack of any kind of legislation to curb it?
Well, we have debated year after year, actually, on where's the right tax structure for tobacco, and the e-cigarettes and the Juuls came in, and when it comes to our kids, our teenagers, the cigarette smoking has gone way down, and that's good. That's good. Celebrate that. Unfortunately, when you talk to school resource officers, when you talk to teachers, administration, there is a problem with kids that are not legally allowed to purchase these e-cigarettes, but have them, and they're easy to conceal. There are instances of getting caught in school using these tobacco devices, and that's concerning. So I think we have addressed a number of issues, raising the age, for instance, a couple of years ago. But when it comes to the e-cigarettes, that's a challenge. That's a challenge because they are different than the traditional regular cigarette. More easy to conceal. They have all these flavors and things like that. When it comes to tax structure and how to do that, my position has been pretty consistent. Has been consistent that when you're talking about cigarettes specifically, that increasing the tax on those is a tax on people, on the poor. The vast majority of smokers are in middle and lower incomes, and this just hits their wallet. And I understand the motivations to target youth, but we address the age to be able to buy these. The concern of the question, and my concern as well, of kids getting hooked on these e-cigarettes, is I think not going to be addressed by tax structure. I think it's going to be addressed by community awareness, by working with kids, by working with our schools, and of course, parental responsibility as well. So I appreciate the question very much, and this is something that we discuss all the time every year. This is a non-budget year, so those discussions will continue to happen, and next year as we go into a budget as well. I think it is something we need to keep an eye on and really do what we can to discourage kids from taking up tobacco. It's expensive, and it's not good for your health, kids.
Thank you, Representative Lauer, and thank you, Senator Walker, for being with us. Just a reminder, we are back here on February 28th at 8 o'clock, back on Zoom. We'll send you all our attendees a reminder. If you want to see a video recap of this or the previous session, go to the Chamber, ColumbusAreaChamber.com and click on Video Archives button, and it'll take you right to our YouTube channel. And then finally, if you want to submit a question for next month or for the end of this month, email thirdhousequestions@gmail.com. And that address is on our calendar listing as well, thirdhousequestions@gmail.com. Thank you all and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good morning.
Bye.